friends, and welcome back to the garden. Today we are planting flowers that I bought over this weekend and whatever the heck else I get the energy to do. I also want to take a second and thank my subscribers. I noticed that the channel is now at 510 subscribers. Holy cow! Thank you so much for joining me on this gardening journey. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that's totally fine. Thanks so much for watching. So I found these two pink hydrangeas that were on clearance, so obviously they were coming home with me. I also bought English daisies, and Home Depot had them in shades of pink, so I tried to find one of each. So both of those are getting a good soak with the hose here, as you see me doing. My violas and my pansies came back from last year, which is great. And as I'm watering them, I really like to look for any more weeds and take them out. The roots come out so much easier in wet soil. It's going to be really important to keep an eye on the moisture of these window boxes here that I've planted them in. They're only 4 inches deep and about 4-inch wide container, 36-inch long. So really not a lot of soil in there. So it's just going to be really important that I keep that well watered. Before I plant the English daisies, I'm going to get in here and pull up the cress and clear out a space for them. So if you're not new here, you know that I like to leave my beds pretty much covered in weeds and only pull them up once it's planting time. My philosophy is that this keeps the soil covered, it keeps the soil alive and mulched essentially, and it is actually a better quality soil once it's time to plant. I'm planting them down the middle as a sloppy divider between the anemones and ranunculus on the left and the penstamen and fennel and whatever else I'm going to put on the right. So for my friends that have not transplanted before, I try to disturb the soil as little as possible, digging out a hole about the size of the root ball. I do tease the roots apart. I think that's important, regardless of whether or not they say to do that. I find it's important. It hasn't shot me in the foot yet. There were so many worms, by the way, guys, in this soil. I had to show them off. I am very proud of this bed. This actually has a lot of my own homemade compost in it from over the years, and it's just a really great soil quality here. So I think it's a really good match for the English daisies and just filling out this perennial flower bed. So the English daisies prefer cooler weather, right? So where they're from in England, it's definitely a more temperate type of climate, right? Not a lot of extreme heat like we experience here in New Jersey. So my hope is that the taller plants on both sides of these daisies will grow taller by the summer and help actually shade them out a bit and protect them. After you plant, you're going to want to firm in the soil around them, either by stepping on them like I'm doing here or pressing very firmly. Good root contact with the soil is important to help avoid things like transplant shock. Now, originally I was excited to put the hydrangea over here, but after looking around the garden, I'm just not sure if I want to put them here. So we're going to skip the hydrangea for now. However, while I was sitting there and having my existential hydrangea crisis, I did make a pretty firm decision that I was going to go ahead and take these dahlias out of storage, and we're going to plant them today. So back in November, we dug these up from various areas of the garden or shook them out from containers and put them in storage. And this is what they look like. They are bursting with life, you guys. Now on the top here, I had left one of the tubers that had crown gall because this was the most beautiful flower I had ever seen, and I had started this one from seed. So I'm gonna see an experiment with that. But the rest look great. They look so healthy. So I decided that I was gonna take them all out and start sorting them into piles divided by color. I have white, red, orangey yellow, purple. So I was sorting them out into piles, trying to read all of these labels, and noticed that blue painter's tape, or painter's tape in general, definitely was not a good idea for labeling them. Now with this guy, it did fine because it was at the top of the box, but because of this disease, it's going to go separately in its own little container and not back into the soil. But the rest of these, they will get put in the soil in various areas around my garden and around these raised beds, and they'll just, you know, be a nice, beautiful pop of color around my vegetables in this garden. The first area we're planting is this half of my deep 2x8 raised bed. I'm loosening up the first 4 to 6 inches of the soil. Before I brought the tubers out, I did thoroughly soak this area with the hose. Reason being is that I just felt like these tubers coming out dry from storage would appreciate the extra moisture, and I'll water them again after I plant them, but I won't water them until either the soil completely dries out, like if I'm feeling pulling back the mulch and seeing that everything is bone dry, or hopefully until I see green growth. So many of these guys were already sprouting and had roots because they were stored in dirt and potting soil, and there was some moisture to it, so they did have a medium that was easy for them to root in, which is actually kind of cool. I mean, they didn't dry out, and that was the problem that I've had in the past, is that they just turn to dust if I don't store it. Like, even I don't know, I've never had success before, so this is great. Once I had everything planted, I wanted to come in with a heavy layer of straw mulch to help protect all of those sprouts. Some of them were sprouting and they were so long that they're still poking out a good 4 inches from the soil. And I wanted to make sure that they had an easier transition. I'm going to water them in really good. Like I said before, we want to make sure that they are saturated enough that they have a great start and that the tubers can, soak up some of that moisture. I need to do the rest of the garden and kind of just started patching them into different areas. I didn't even remember how many of these dahlia tubers I had until I had to go find spots to freaking put them in. So it was just sort of running around and finding a corner, which is what we did. And I kind of poked them into every single bed, including the perennial flower bed that I had the daisies in. I also put them in my herb bed. And while I was planting them in the herb bed, I noticed I had one already in the herb bed and it was sprouting in the corner. So fun mystery dahlia that I completely forgot about that overwintered just fine, which now makes me think I'm not going to pull them up again this year. I'm going to just leave them wherever I have put them, and if they live, they live. If they don't, they don't. And my final round were these red, huge tubers. Look at that. Huge red tubers from dahlias that I had grown. I'm so proud. It was about at this time, though, that I began to ask myself, will I have enough space for these vegetables after planting all of these dahlias? I wanted to go back after planting all of them, and I watered in every area. But I do want to, again, go back and say, after these grow and finally, put out their blooms and their leaves, they will probably take up a lot of square footage. So I will need to account for that when I finally do start planting vegetables. Since I was feeling a little frisky and I had the energy, I decided I wanted to clean out these 2 pots, and I actually had a pot of beans that I had forgotten I was soaking to can, and now they are fermented beans that I need to put in the compost. So I'm gonna plop them into these little bokashi bins that I have, since I typically compost in my containers anyway, and I didn't have the space anywhere else. So the beans were going in the pots, and they'll provide tons of food for all of the different worms and other decomposers that I was seeing as I was going through the soil. Just so many worms, huge earthworms everywhere in the garden this spring, and it brings me so much freaking joy to see them. The extra dahlia soil that I had, I decided to just put in these pots. They do need more soil. The thing with organic matter is that as it's digested and broken down, right, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So you actually lose soil volume over time from all of the organic matter being digested. So same thing that I do with every container. I put a nice thick layer of straw mulch on top to protect the soil from drying out and to keep all of that life and bioactivity thriving in these containers that I love so much. And thankfully, even my city water doesn't seem to kill them. While moving the straw bag around, I finally noticed that it got its ink all over me, which I did not appreciate. All right, friends, time for a quick recap. We'll be able to plant in those containers soon, and I need to address this container next. In the back here, we ended up planting the shorty dahlias that I grew from seed. Well, I put yellow dahlias in the back there. I've got red dahlias in this bed. And then I have the other diseased dahlia in its own quarantine container back here to sprout and see if I can take cuttings from it. Hopefully the cuttings won't carry the disease. I do have these 2 hydrangea back here, and I need to decide if I like those placed where they are or if I want to put them somewhere else in the garden. But I have completely run out of steam by now, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the garden today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.